Here you go, David. I have that. Yeah, that's okay. I have it.
Well, I'm so happy to hear your news. That's wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah. Um, I don't know. You just kind of see everything in a different light, and I have found insights coming a little quicker. Just I don't know. I suppose knowing of things without any effort at all.
Yes, that's
It's a kind of nearly a lazy way. This because I found most of my time these states that had effort. Now it's kind of a genuine slowing down
yes,
that doesn't require
that's great. Yes.
much of anything really.
Well, effortlessness is beyond lazy, really, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. But there's no big deal, I guess is what I'm trying to say about any of it.
No.
It's like there's just no big deal. And I'm fascinated with the fact that I've spent so much time on this psychological side of things, trying to get to this or figure that out. And it was quite intense for me, all that kind of, and I'm just viewing everything just as it is, really. And it's a pretty very relaxed, nice way to be.
Wonderful.
And just even listening, um, and kind of staying more present,
Mm.
really. And yeah, I just love the idea that this knowing comes through
Yes,
in a very, what's the word? It's a way that is so gentle and kind,
yes,
rather than having the answers or having to think about something.
yes.
It's like they just pop up effortlessly, and it's kind of like, oh, this is where I've been looking for all the time, out there, but it's here. You know, that kind. There's a gentleness though,
Yeah,
and there's certainly a kindness. Now that's just what I'm feeling
yeah, that's
right
what.
now. That's genuine.
Yes.
You know,
You
that's
realize that effortless being is where we are all along, and it's where everyone is. It's
mm,
just that the personalized mode is something that we kind of turn it on and off moment to moment almost, because it's only when we it's only when we engage the mind and start thinking or speaking that we're in the personal mode. But
yeah. Mhm.
we're actually remaining in impersonal being all along, but we're activating the personal mode. But as soon as we stop thinking and speaking, then the only thing there is really is impersonal, infinite being. So it's
Mm.
crazy, really.
It's crazy because it's so simple.
Yeah,
That's what's crazy about the
yeah,
whole thing, that
yeah.
it's so near to us,
Yes,
but we just can't see how near it is to us. And as you kind of said there in one of your programs, it's really, I love the idea of that, even knowing of an option to
yeah,
turn it on and off. I really find that very helpful,
good.
because just that word, you have an option,
Yes,
it just steadies the whole thing even more, because we do have that kind of those concepts and so on going on,
yes,
and it just feels, all right, yeah, I do have a choice here, actually.
yes. Which we weren't told about really. Well, the education system doesn't tell us, and
Yeah.
the religions don't tell us. But um, yeah, it is. It's so simple, really. But once we're told, it's quite easy, really.
It's shockingly easy, actually. I know
Mm.
I'm only kind of waking up to it, and it's interesting because I see it all pointing, the mindfulness, the being in the present moment. Everything is pointing to the
Yes,
one thing, as I see it, which
yes,
is you're here, you're present. We're having this conversation. I'm sitting on this chair. This is the reality,
yes,
and anything outside of that is past or history or memory or whatever. And
Yes.
there's a joy in knowing, I think, for me, this is what's coming up, is just the freshness.
Yes.
Because I kind of feel I must have been kind of deaf and blind, but what fascinates me is the rushing, this need that I think I was rushing all my life to catch up with the world.
Mm. Yes.
So because I was in that mode of rushing and trying to catch up on all that kind of levels, I was moving further away from my natural
Beingness.
being.
Mm.
Yeah, and yet that when a kind of the realization of that, it's just popping in easily and effortlessly, and it's kind of, oh yeah,
Yes.
oh yes, of course.
Yeah.
Without too much flapping, it's just, yeah, that's it, you know.
Yeah. Well, there can be a little bit of motion, and then the solution always is just to stop and realize, well, actually, it's only the motion or the effort which is making it seem as though there's something other than effortless being.
It's all about that word, I think. We're kind of, I suppose, conditioned into
Mm.
the effort of everything and putting everything on that effort.
Yes.
We're so conditioned from that early age, and then it takes these moments to realize, gosh, that's it. It's the effort. So when you mention effortless being, oh, there's the difference, your effort. And then it takes time, because that effort, I think, is so deeply rooted
Mm.
in the person.
Mm.
It just, even trying to, and then I'd say, don't even try and understand it. It's just try and be effortless.
Mm.
And yeah, it's just such an easy state. And it just makes sense of everything.
Mm. Mm.
Is that just other part that's nodding away inside saying, yeah, yeah, and I don't know if you ever heard of it, but I noticed with all my dreams, it's all about dying. I'm in the coffin and I'm dying, but there's no fear around dying. It's like,
No.
or I'm going through a tunnel and I'm saying, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, but then there's something bigger coming. It is so
Yes.
back if some nights ago. It's all about that. And I think it's just arriving
Mm. Mm.
into that sense of yourself that's without any kind of fear or phobia or whatever. It's just, for me anyway, at the moment. I found that, I don't know if you heard, I'm sure you have, Douglas Harding,
Yes.
The Headless Way, I think it's called.
Quite a simple way, really.
I thought, here we go again. Here it is again, and all I could do was laugh at I thought, yeah, that's his way. Everybody, I guess, but I caught that too. It's just everything kind of coming together
Yes, you can
and making
see
sense.
when you listen to any teacher now, you can sense what they're pointing to.
Yeah. It's all the same though, isn't it?
It is pretty much, yeah.
Like we have different teachings and doctrines and this and this, but I tend to think it's all to the one
Mm.
point,
Well, we're playing a little game of hide and seek. So some teachers seem to point in one direction and then others in another, but that's all part of the little trail that's being revealed to us. And then you have a look at, if you look back to see the sequence in which your true nature has been revealed, there's a sequence which couldn't have been any other way, really. If you look at it, you see that, there's one thing which leads to another, and then it all, just comes together and then it clicks in place.
So there's no mistakes, really.
No, no.
It's all meant to be exactly as
Yes.
it is.
Yeah.
And I like that idea
Mm.
that they're because when I look back, I think, oh yeah, that dot led to that dot, led to that.
Yes.
And I can kind of put that pathway for a long time. I kind of had that innocence,
Mm.
and people would say, but you have to make plans and this and that. But in the lack of making plans, things happened
Yes.
anyway, right? So then I thought, well, that, people were saying that's not the way that, but things just fell into place. So then
Mm.
I go back and I go to university, and I'm back in that kind of cognitive flow, and nothing happened. It's choppy,
Mm.
and then I come out of that again. So I'm thinking, yeah, it's all relative.
Yes.
It's just the way it is,
Yes.
until you get to this point.
Yeah, it's really when you shift from the mind predominating to effortless
Yeah.
speed,
Mm.
being the sort of foundation of the way you function, and that's something which you just realize is very solid, and everything can work from there without doing and without trying, and then we can, the option of the personal realm is still available. But we can even change the language slightly sometimes if we wish to remain as effortless being, because we're conditioned to use words like I and me and mine. But actually, the simplicity of just, there is awareness of whatever is appearing, and if we use impersonal language, then we can experience without having to engage the mode of individuality.
What I find is I was with a group of friends there the other day, and it kind of, I just appreciated them for who they were, what was
Yeah.
coming on, what was saying, as
Yes.
opposed to me wanting to interrupt or have an opinion.
Yes. Fantastic. Yeah, that's great.
It just didn't seem to. It didn't. There was no need in me.
No, that's great.
You know.
That there is just um, there is just kind of the flow of life, and there isn't anything to fix really. And
You
so, sometimes you have a feeling, well, there's a possibility of saying something here, and intuitively when there's that kind of opportunity. But at other times, yeah, as you say, just enjoying everyone exactly as they are.
Yeah, and it's kind of like that intuitive sense of wanting to say something. I think just arises,
Yes.
as opposed to having to think about it. And the effort in conversation
Mm.
when there's no awareness there is so different.
Yes.
And it's to notice that and to say, well, you don't need to put all that effort in, but at the same time, you can participate in a more kind of, as you'd say, effortless way that
Yes.
seems more natural. And I found that fascinating.
Mm.
Uh, I was kind of nearly smiling at myself, because normally I'm in there and saying, well, and this and that opinion. And I thought the amount of energy
Yes.
it takes one to, when you're in all this, I think, and you're right, and it's just so natural,
Mm.
because it's like you're just sitting there, and you're enjoying it, but you don't need to put that effort into it.
Yeah, that's great. I know my girlfriend, well, I'm not with her anymore, but the girlfriend from a few years ago, she used to quite often make social arrangements, and we'd go for dinner parties and things. And she'd always tell me off afterwards. She said, well, you just don't take part in anything. You're just sat there like a dummy.
I love it. I love it. I really do, because that's exactly. And I was the one that was all having something to say, and I love engaging and this kind of thing. And all of a sudden, I'm just kind of sitting there, and but I'm quite happy. There's
Yeah.
no
Well, I
need.
think people sense it isn't that you're disinterested, because there is still full awareness of everything going on. And if someone asks a question, you can answer it because you're actually listening. But it isn't, you're not in competitive mode with anyone, are you?
No. And it's again, to me, it's the realization of how much energy is expended into you know, conversation
Mm.
and differences and all of
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
yeah,
It's a much softer flow, that
yeah,
when you just want to say something, you'll say it.
yes. Well, unity consciousness is effortless, really. So, we're conditioned into the subject object mode,
Yes.
and prior to realization, we're showing up as a person, and then we're having conversations with other people. But with realization, you're showing up as this infinite, effortless, impersonal, omnipotent field of awareness within which everything is appearing, including all the body, minds, the conversation, everything. So it's a different perspective, really.
Yeah, and it's like, well, it's like a wave just flowing through anyway, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
I kind of think it really doesn't matter. You
No.
know, it's like eating an apple and you enjoy it and it's gone and that's the end of it.
Yeah.
You know, you don't need
Yeah.
to think any more about that. I
No.
find this fascinating because it's so, you know, uncomplicated
Hmm.
from what I can, well, what I'm experiencing. It's
Yeah,
trying,
well, spot on. The way you're describing it is wonderful, because it is just effortless. It's joyful.
yeah,
It's light as well, and it's from that space of impersonal being. It's quite comical in some ways,
isn't it?
quite entertaining. Yeah.
I actually find it quite childlike.
Yeah, well, it is actually, and that's the relief of realization, because we can just return to being like a child. There's nothing to defend anymore. We don't have any beliefs to defend. We don't
No,
have a self-image to defend. But there's nothing really.
there's absolutely nothing. I just, you know, it's here, it's there, you deal, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it's just that's it. And I'm kind of thinking I should have realized this before now. Uh, so I was telling you last time, you won't remember obviously, but about my son who is high functioning Asperger's.
Yeah, I do remember actually.
Oh, do you?
Yeah,
Um,
it's nearly 2 years ago, isn't it, since we
is yeah.
spoke last time?
You've some memory with all the people you go through. God, I hope I get that out as well. Um, yeah, I was just mentioning last time to you, and it was right up in a heap because there was too much fixing on my behalf,
Yes,
um, and you know, this I think the fear around expectations that you know he everything, but was all future
yes,
related.
yes.
And so I'm only now being in this effortless mode.
Mm.
And from my understanding, you know, with him when we're together, he can quite read the present moment.
Yes,
Like he can see from tone, expression, if you're
yes,
really present,
yes.
which I find fascinating, really. Um,
Yeah, it's really interesting the way you describe that, and it's funny how the themes emerge sometimes. Because I was having a conversation with a lady yesterday evening, and she has a son who is similar, who
okay.
is nonverbal, and she was saying how there is just the kind of intuitive knowing of everything going on, and also um, the you realize that the installation of individuality is taking place largely through thought and speech. So it's reinforcing that sense of I and me and mine. But the the health system especially, wants to put people into a little box and say, oh, there's something wrong with you. But it's actually because um, that way of functioning doesn't align with the programmed version of individuality. But actually, it's a higher level of functioning, really, because they haven't installed the
Yeah,
limitations. So it's
yeah,
the
yeah.
opposite, really, of what we're told.
Absolutely. And what I'm gathering at the moment in his situation is that he split off very early to accommodate being the same as everyone else, right? So, which was a lot of effort on his behalf. And so his problem, as I see it, and whether it's a problem or not, but it's like people don't get, because he acts like you, like I, like, you know.
Yes.
So people are saying this guy is okay, like,
Yeah.
you know. So I gathered at an early age with his siblings, and that he just split off to copy them.
Yes.
But yes, when I'm very present with him, I
Mm.
see that higher intelligence can read
Mm.
the energy field quite easily. You can't pretend or whatever. This guy can sense just looking at you. So it's quite interesting for me and him
Mm.
when we're in that field. He catches the nuances, even how your tone is. It's like he's with
He's
you,
attuned to the tone of your speech, and
everything.
yeah.
And he is very aware when you're present, and he catches that moment for
Mm.
sure. So it's really interesting, because I'm thinking this guy has a very acute awareness
Mm.
himself, but because he's split off, he doesn't trust it, I
Yes.
think. So I'm just hoping, or maybe you can say something about. I'm just that, my presence now will support,
Mm.
because I think the idea of fixing him is gone
Right. Yes.
mentally. My cognitive way of looking at it is, I see the difference of what I was doing, and now just allowing him, but in a sense of presence, allowing him to be exactly what he is,
Yes.
as much as I want to be present with myself. Does that make sense?
It does, absolutely. And um, because there's the intuitive and telepathic connection between the two of you,
Mm,
then there's the possibility of your son evolving and developing on more subtle levels, really, which is the most important aspect. The human experience is really, um, it's an opportunity to realign with our infinite impersonal nature rather than to develop on a personal level. So, um, the personal realm is only a little temporary ride. So we can achieve things in a worldly sense.
mm,
What is, of real value is to establish the ability to function from impersonal, effortless being. And
mm,
plus, it's just the way your son's kind of presenting himself to the world, which is slightly different. But the things of value are there. And again, it's seeing it in a way where you're not putting it in a context of the idea that there's something wrong, because that's like the seeking process. We're told that there's something wrong, or we feel there's something wrong, and then we're seeking to fix that. But actually, when you stop the seeking, then you're where you were trying to get to when you were seeking, because it's just effortless just to be as you are. And the same applies really to your relationship with your son. It's applying the same principle, which is realizing, well, actually, there's nothing wrong here. There is something which is going to emerge, which is going to be very enriching, for everyone. And it's something which will arise from effortlessness, and it'll come in a way which the mind could never conceive of, and it'll
mm.
be presented to you. So it's just seeing it as a sense of adventure, really, rather than, previously the idea of fixing was something arising in the mind, but the
That's
mind
right.
doesn't have the capability of fixing anything, really. But
That's beautiful. Yeah, I get that actually. Yeah. Mm.
the infinite being knows how to fix everything.
Mm, mm. And I get that, David. My mind, which to me was fear, in the fixing of him. But
Mm.
what I see there is the accepting and the allowing,
Yes,
they're very different ways of seeing him.
yes,
And I think out of that, whatever is whatever is. I
yes,
can't determine anything, but there's more of a wholeness
yes,
in that relationship, in that accepting.
yes, exactly. And
Uh,
really, the thing you've discovered in your own experience is the most value and the most enriching aspect is when life becomes more childlike, and that's something which applies to your son as well. So really, when the mind, the mind's trying to push and shove things to try to fix something, but actually the solution really with your son is just for every day to be as delightful as possible, and for it to be something which is just very easy, and there, not to be anything that no element of strain. On a practical level, obviously you consider certain things like, his financial welfare and that kind of thing.
mm,
But
mm.
but that's something which you do on a practical level. But in terms of everything to do with his life experience, it's really, um, on some ways, you could say he's more sensible than most humans because he hasn't um, he hasn't agreed to the limitations of the human experience to the same degree as most of us have.
Yeah, he's that word just for me, the sense of acceptance,
Mm.
it has big connotations because I honestly don't know if that was ever available because I was so busy trying to fix.
Yes,
And I think energetically or whatever way, I think that will find its way because when we're accepted as is,
yes,
something I think changes in all of us,
definitely.
because as human beings, we all want to be accepted
Yes,
rather than fixed.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so he would have been carrying that I'm not good enough anyway,
He
which
said,
would drive
yes,
his force towards like the brothers and sister and I want to be like them.
yes,
So I think my understanding is in the acceptance, there's a pureness in that of love that
yes,
has to be felt
yes,
because that we do feel that.
definitely.
Yeah.
And really accepting that no one is in a position to kind of advise you really because you're from your sovereign nature, um, obviously because you're his mum, the ability for any kind of intuitive response or
Mm,
any knowledge you need or finding contexts to experience the relationship, all of those will come through you in a way where they can't come through anyone else really.
mm, mm, mm. And it's going back and relating to what you said, where there are no mistakes.
Mm.
Because very much now I can put my hand up and say, I recognize all of this process was very, very important. The fact of him coming home and living with us, like it was like an explosion,
Yeah,
right? But I'm sitting here now thinking it was all actually very important to happen for our development as
yeah,
well.
yes,
Grounding, the staying with, the not running away from, the not fixing.
yes,
No, so the whole idea that there are no mistakes in anything is, I find, quite freeing in itself
definitely.
because I'm sure many others go through that too, where you just want to flee and get away from the horror or the this isn't working or whatever, and they're quite trying times.
Yes,
Uh, but it's also for me, my understanding is it's bringing you closer and closer to where you need to be,
yes,
to stay with.
yes, yeah,
Um, if we look at the physiology, the fight and flight or the, rest and digest. So I think everything has its part and principle to
yes,
play in everything anyway.
yeah,
So yeah, I'm kind of just smiling at the good of it, really. And it's some part of me kind of felt from our last experience that it's just a nice time because to chat to you again because it's clear to me too, I can let things go quite easily. Like I was in this group and that group and there's a sense of it's just not needed anymore. But it's a very there was a part of me trying to hang on to, that group, and well, we do this and that. But then below that was a sense of you don't need any more, and
Yeah, the players on your stage, some new ones come in and some others step
yeah,
off the stage.
yeah, yeah. But there was something about the identifying with some things that I felt it was okay to let go of.
Yes.
And it's kind of really trusting in that intuitive
Yeah.
side, and leaving it open for that to
Yeah.
arrive,
Yeah.
and so I'm very excited about all of this. Very
Wonderful.
excited.
It's great fun.
I really am. It's fantastic. And I have to say, listening to your programs as well, they're lovely to dip in and out of, and catch up on little things. They've been very helpful.
That's great. Well, again, it's quite playful and childlike and effortless because there isn't any structure to it. It's only the people who show up and then only the ones who agree to allow the conversation to be posted. But it's such a variety of people from all around the world. But
Yeah,
it's yeah, a lot of fun. But the conversations, you never quite know where they're going to go. It's like our conversation this evening. I wasn't quite sure,
sure.
to be
Mm.
the past couple of years. But it's
You
yeah,
see, I love that, David, because initially my head was saying, now I lost disc and that, and then I thought, why? What,
no.
what's the point? Because I used to always prepare notes, for even when I'm teaching. Now I don't bother. I
No,
just
that's
say,
great.
there you go. Whatever comes up is whatever comes up, and it'll be grand. But that takes a big step, but it's a beautiful step.
Hmm.
But I think that's what's so attractive about your YouTube channel, is because you're unflappable. You just kind of you can see it's a case of let's see,
Hmm. Hmm.
and it's so you are what it says on the tin, effortless. So I just wanted to say
How
that.
did the realization emerge for you, Rita? How did it happen over a period of time, would you say? Or because
I'm quite dogmatic, but I think honestly, over the last, I would say, month,
yes.
there's little insights been coming and coming. So it wasn't a big,
Hmm.
but rather it was insights, and they all came through a kind of stillness.
Hmm.
Now they came through a need in me to not be doing as much as I was doing. And it
Yes.
was like another part of me was saying, it's okay.
Hmm.
It's actually okay.
Yes.
Because a lot of our friends, it's all about, doing and who you do and this and that and the other. And there was a distinct sense I was listening to in me that said, it's actually okay.
Yes.
And so for the last month or so, I've been kind of getting up and just adhering to that, walking in the park, going for coffee, but being on my own a lot.
Yeah, that's good. That's very important in the early stages because when we're alone, we're actually remaining as impersonal being. We step into the role of the character if we're with other people. So it's
Mm.
yeah, it's great the way you did that.
Well, I thought what was lovely for me, David, is the sense of this knowing that was coming in, that it was okay. I
Yes.
mean, morning after morning, instead of kind of doing the whatever I have to do, it was more a case, I'll just get up and see. And then it was a case, oh yeah, now, it'd be nice to go for a walk.
Mm.
But it was about just it's okay to be on your own.
Yes.
And the contentment of that
Mm.
was actually lovely.
Mm.
just the contentment of the simplicity, you know, walking, you know, looking around, not for any particular reason, but just
Yeah.
being anywhere in nature, sitting on the chair here, it didn't matter.
Mm.
It's kind of the word I can only use is it's okay.
Yes.
It's all okay anyway, you know, I guess I'm very happy to have arrived, if that's the word,
Mm.
but to acknowledge just being,
Yes.
you know, genuinely happy, that there's not too much coming in, wanting, you know, things to happen and so on. It just doesn't matter anymore. And that's not in a dismissive way, but rather a real way of it's okay.
Yes.
It's actually absolutely okay. And that's where I'm sitting at the moment. And I'm truly very grateful to have this, I don't know, wisdom or ease, or I don't know what it's called, but
It's
there's a
simple.
gratitude for it,
Yes.
you know, that having to kind of arrived out of an awful lot of effort into effort, crazy effort. It's in that book. It's in that guy. I'll go to that course. I'll do this. Back to university. Only to arrive. And you know, do you find it too? I find in the effortlessness, it's well, it's timeless, and
Mm.
and so there's no wanting anything now to happen. Whatever happens will happen.
Yes.
You know, there's no kind of expectation. And I think I always knew that as well when I was a kid, but then whatever. But there's no expectation. There's more of an ease about what will come out of if it
Yeah.
does and if it doesn't.
Yeah.
So there you go. All your teaching has led me to this point. But thank you.
Well, it's the self revealing itself to itself, and it is unique for everyone. But um, yeah, it's great the way it's, you know, the effort has dissolved really, and then the effortlessness which has always been there is revealed.
I think it just makes me smile more at life.
Yes.
Uh, rather than, you know, the seriousness with which I put so much into. It's like the coin has flipped,
Yeah.
you know, and I can genuinely be with somebody and listen without any effect of anything. And I don't need an answer. I don't need,
No,
you know,
we need a response from them or anything. No.
no, it's that push to, I should say, or do, or whatever. It's really all I can say about it. And I really love what I just heard there on one of your sessions. That idea of having the option to remember, you
Yeah.
know, you do have the option.
Yeah.
That to me was really, oh yeah, you know, it just added something
Mm.
extra.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, individuality is optional. It's a relief to discover.
It's just one word, but it does
Mm.
hold that connotation,
Mm.
you know, if we get too kind of bogged down or whatever.
Yes.
How do you find this, what I'm talking, like, it's like you're expanding or something, or maybe that's not the right word, but you're not as contracted. There's a sense of openness or something. Do you find that?
Yeah, definitely, because individuality does feel like a contraction. So the content coming from the mind tends to be delivering, um, you know, thoughts and experiences and emotions which have a flavor of contraction. But when we discover effortless being and we discover that's always been there, then functioning from effortless being, there is no sense of contraction. And as you say, the kind of gentle delivery of the knowledge we need and the information, because it's a state of total relaxation, then there's a natural sense of expansion. But it's really that you're all along, you have been the totality of existence. You've been the infinite being, which is an infinite field of consciousness and awareness and beingness. It's just that you begin to sense that more and more, because the sense of individuality is really the opposite of that.
Isn't that beautiful? Like what you just said there, all along, it's who we have been.
Mm.
And all along, our lives, and it's just beautiful when you think about it, that we've been closed off from this that's been here all along. And it has to be. I mean, we're only here for a while anyway. And then we're back into what we've been all along. But then, I don't know, I just find even driving and stuff, I don't radios, I don't anything. I don't know. And sometimes you're not moving, as I said before, but it's everything else seems to be moving. And it's kind of funny.
The scenery is going past you, isn't it? Because you're stationary.
Yeah, and you have that feeling, don't you, of being stationary and the world is moving and you're just there.
Yeah,
It's a strange one, but
it is.
that's another knowing as well. I think I've had flavors of that at different stages as well, but it's like bringing it all together now, But yeah, that's where I am.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, it's lovely. And it was lovely because I thought, as I said, it was a nice time. I felt the timing was right to just make a connection with you.
Yeah, so nice.
So I thought, great,
Well, I
Here,
just love listening to you because it's just kind of activating it. And
yeah.
it's I've had to make an effort a couple of times during our conversation to contribute something, but I prefer just listening to.
Oh my God, there's no fooling you anyway. You can't fool an old fool. Is that what they used to say here? I don't mean that.
I like that. No, I like that one. That's a good traditional Irish expression, isn't it?
Oh, it is. It is. That and many more, David. That and many more. So yeah, just lovely to make that connection again. And I just love the idea here of not having to put, myself under a list of what did I say to David or this or that. It just doesn't matter. And I think there's a knowing when that kind of meeting takes place.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be right or anything or whatever.
No, well, it's just really natural, and the way you've described it is, it's just so authentic.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to describe it to you so you can, yeah. She's not losing.
Especially so accurately. That's the nice thing, and because it is, as you say, it's almost as though, well, you recognize you've always been there, but then there's a kind of seeing that most of it was completely in place for a long time, and there have just been one or two little bits that have just fallen into place at the end.
Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know, a remembering or a knowing or I know as a kid I had this.
Yes.
Like I know I had one experience as a child, and when you have an experience you never forget it.
Yeah.
And I remember having one experience as a child, and I don't think I ever did forget it. And so then the journey was the journey. And but I think that experience is probably what makes you journey, what makes you kind
Yeah.
of keep searching. So
Because you know it's there, don't you? But it's a matter of kind of rediscovering it somehow.
yeah. And I think I've always been trying to get to that point of where I was. And now that was as a child. And so I think that childlike experience has kind of come full
circle.
circle in and I guess the circle is about a learning process of knowing how to get home again. Would that be right?
Yes, definitely. Well, really, the simplicity available as a child, that was noticed then. But
Yeah.
because the conditioning we had in a worldly sense was to do with effort, we're told to achieve anything requires effort. So we
Hmm.
then apply effort to try to find what we're looking for.
Hmm.
But actually, the solution is that it's effortless to find it. So we're using all the wrong equipment, really.
Yeah, but that's unconscious,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yes.
Until that awakens.
Yes.
And is it in that we have choice as well? I mean, you can go so far out looking for this, and which seems to be part of the journey
Yes.
until you come back in again. You take that turn to come
Yeah.
back,
Yeah.
and I guess some part of you has to be ready to recognize, on all of those levels that you have been out, but now you're back.
Yes.
Because it's a beauty. There's a beauty in that, what I would call all that effort to land back
Yes.
in that sense of effortlessness. There's a beauty.
Mm.
It's like you've been out in the cold, out in the forest or something, and
Yes.
you were lost out there.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, oh my God, you're getting that drink of water you haven't had or whatever, and the appreciation
Mm.
is quite magnificent
Yeah.
to recognize that. So maybe we have to go out to come back or something. I don't know. But I
Yeah.
do have appreciation.
Yeah. It seems to be, we can look at it in lots of different ways. So we can see that there is the element of contrast, because if all you can ever be is the infinite, omnipotent, omnipresent,
Mm,
impersonal, timeless being,
mm.
then all we can do is pretend we're not that for a little while, for the joy of remembering that we always have been. And
Yeah, so it's a game in a way of consciousness, I guess.
it seems to be a game, and we seem to be able to select the intensity or the duration as well. I think, before we embark on this little
Mm.
roundabout, I think there are some big roundabouts and some little roundabouts. Some people go on it's quite a short ride, and some people it's a bit longer.
Yeah,
But
and that must be part of the plan as well. You know,
yeah,
the different roundabouts that we must go on
yeah,
for some reason. And I mean, that's probably part of the whole process. But I do love the idea that there's no time.
yeah. Well, that is definitely the case. I
I
think
love that.
yes. Well, you can see that, like in unity consciousness, you see that there is potential for things like infinite, eternal love. The things we experience in a human sense. So things like love seems to be fleeting because the people you love, you may only be with them for a little while.
Yeah,
Whatever the duration, even if it's 80 years, it's still a short span.
yeah,
Um, and also, most experiences are fleeting, whereas but that only applies to the dualistic realm. And again, I think it is for that contrast, because in unity, there's the option for everything to be as long as we want it to be, so that it can be infinite. There can be infinite love, there can be infinite unity, infinite compassion, um, infinite bliss. And then sometimes, I think there's an option just to say, well, I'll just have a little bit of a contrast to that.
yeah. I find now getting up in the morning, I mean, there's no difference to going to sleep and waking up. It's like, well, who said it was Monday or Thursday
Yes.
or who said anything? Like, it's just here, You know what I mean? I don't see it as split up.
No. Well,
In,
it's
does that make
non-polar,
sense?
isn't it? You see, I think the way we're conditioned, the way you described it with the working week. So, for some people, the contrast between, say, Friday night and Monday morning is
Mm,
huge.
mm.
They're in the dualistic mode intensely, but with effortless being, all the days roll into one, really, because there is no.
There's no, this idea of a name for a day
Mm,
or an afternoon or whatever.
yeah.
It's all kind of little box things, but it's
Yes.
all the same.
Yes, it is.
There's no separation. To me, I love that whole idea. It just sits with me that, of course, there's no time,
Yeah.
and again, even the freedom in that recognition, of course,
Yes.
there's no time. Oh gosh,
Yes.
because time, when we have time in our heads, it's so limited,
Definitely.
isn't
Mm,
it?
yeah.
And there's a beauty in and just, oh God, no time. We're
Yeah.
just
And
just here while we're here.
yes, and the perfection of that timelessness as well, because you see that you've always remained and rested as the timeless being.
Mm,
Then even with things like therapy or the idea that there are these subconscious programs or limitations or
yeah.
things to process, you realize all of that is actually within the dualistic realm. None of it actually belongs to us. So we
Mm,
can spend years and years doing therapy and meditation and all kinds of things
yeah,
to try to fix something.
that's
But
right.
but because we're just effortless. There isn't anything. It's just a
It's
vibe.
that to me is a never-ending spiral. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? That you just can go on with that for the rest of your life,
yeah,
and you're missing the main point.
yeah,
That's kind of, this is work, this therapy thing. And I mean, I'm a therapist. I've done this for you, but this is work. You know what I mean? It's work for you and it's work for them, and it can go on and on and on. Where I think bringing your presence to somebody is beautiful,
mm, mm,
like the effortless being,
mm,
even in sitting with someone,
mm.
just allowing yourself that to be in your effortless space
Yes,
with somebody. I find even in conversation is there's something lovely that moves, that goes on in that, when there's not this in the way.
yes. Well, you're kind of holding your infinite nature um, in a conscious way, and it's just like a unified. Well, words can't really express it, but it's just that while you're not activating the dualistic realm of experience, then others are receiving an invitation from you to be able to
Mm,
turn the dualistic realm in their experience because they sense it, because what they're sensing in you is their own essential beingness anyway. So
mm.
it's something which they're, as you say, with realization, we're totally familiar with it. And when it becomes totally clear, we realize, well, I've known that all along.
Yeah, yeah. And
So
there's a knowing in everybody, isn't there? That
there is, there is.
it's like we're not just defined by the skin. It's
No,
like it's just it's there. We all have the knowing.
we do. And the telepathic,
Yeah,
energetic transmission, people sense it and it's obvious in a way because it's what they are. So it's the one thing which is in a way more obvious and more profound than anything you could ever say because
yeah.
it's the truth of everyone's beingness.
And the beauty of, for want of a better expression, standing out of your own way
Mm.
is the simplification of that.
Yes.
Because that's, I think, where the other can pick up.
Mm.
I was watching it there with my husband even, it's like something changes. even in the stillness.
Yes.
They can be just minute things and small, but there is something subtle
Mm.
that's always apparent, I think, in the field for those moments where we're not in our own way.
Yes.
That's kind of what I'm beginning to see and understand more.
Well, it's great because others will see that in you, and they'll recognize it as something that's very attractive, and they'll want to know more about that. But you're just kind of embodying that, or well,
Mm.
embodying isn't really the right word, because it's what they're seeing is the infinite field of awareness, which or beingness, which you and they and all of us have always been. And
So you don't have
so,
to use the body. Um, what part does that play in the whole thing? The body end of it, part of
well,
it.
I like the Indian version of the koshas, because that describes the sequence of manifestation in quite an effective way. Because you realize we all remain as attributeless being. We're just this infinite, timeless field, which has no qualities in itself. And then there's a series of filters. So for the first one is infinite bliss, and then the next one is effortless being, or the body of wisdom, and then the third one is the mental body, the fourth the emotional, and the fifth the physical. So really, the as Ramana Maharshi says, the dualistic realm is an overgrowth. So the mind, the mental realm, the emotional realm, and the physical realm, they're not really required. They're quite gross realms of experience.
Yeah.
So we can do things like trying to have this sense of embodiment, but actually, um I mean, it's you can't say anything's right or wrong, but my preference always is to remain as the infinite impersonal field. When the option is discovered to just remain as an infinite field of bliss, um there's no comparison really between infinite bliss and the personal realm of experience. And so, we can refine each of them. So we can refine the physical realm, we can refine the emotional realm, we can refine the mental realm. Um, but but the simplicity is just there. So impersonal being is just there, and then the other ones there. It's like having vehicles that we can use them if we wish to, but um, quite often it's nicer just being where you are, because you can go out for a little spin in your car and then just come back again.
With the refining is that a kind of mental thing, or is it a case of when we're in the present moment, we're not, we don't need to do anything. It's
Well,
it,
it's what
it
you
just comes through.
yes, what you've described is refinement, really,
Hmm.
Rita, which is because you've become very familiar with effortless being, and
Hmm.
you've seen that with clarity. um, Effortless being then finds its way into the dualistic realm. So
Hmm.
the way it impacts on the mental realm is it tends to quieten the mental realm.
Yes.
So
Yes.
rather than the mind wanting to be intervening, having conversations, asserting one's position and beliefs, and having
Hmm.
a little bit of conflict and those things, that isn't really attractive anymore. So
Yes.
you
Yes.
find that there's an integration which is happening on the mental level, which happens automatically. It isn't anything that you need to kind of work at, because it's
Yeah.
just what happens when effortless being is established. And
Hmm.
the same applies really to the emotional realm. So when the when the mental realm is predominating, it tends to be that the emotional realm is being activated much more. So
Okay.
there are emotional responses to thoughts and beliefs, and
Yes.
taking positions on things.
Hmm.
But when you're not taking positions and then the mind goes quiet, then the emotions tend to go quiet as
That's
well.
right. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
And also, when the mind and emotions go quiet, the physical body tends to go quiet. Uh,
Hmm.
so the
Hmm.
functioning of the physical comes into balance. Sometimes because in effortless being, the mind stops, the emotions go quiet. Sometimes the breathing stops as well. And then you have to take a bit of a gasp because you.
I've never heard of that. The
Well,
breathing.
well,
Wow.
I did. I noticed. I didn't really. I wasn't really aware of it before, but I did an interview, I think about 3 years ago, with a lady called Luciana, a lovely lady. And I noticed at the start of the conversation, there was this kind of gasping for air, but it's because there was just this subtle, effortless state. And because from effortless being, the mind settles, um, the
Nervous.
emotions settle, and then the body settles. So it's
Yeah.
almost like you're at the traffic lights in the conversation, and
Yeah.
they're on red, and then the person says something, and you suddenly got to crank it up and get going.
I I studied a lot on the vagus nerve and the obviously the nervous system,
Mm,
and I find that in those quiet spaces you can have involuntary breathing. Now
yeah,
that to me is a kind of pointer to where the the body is organizing itself in some way. The nervous system is adhering more to that more relaxed response
yeah, yeah,
than the fight and flight.
yes,
And so when I'm in the effortless state, sometimes I feel that involuntary breath. It
yes,
kind of comes up quickly or something. It's
yes,
like it's been holding in some bubble in the body.
yeah.
And when you go into that kind of more relaxed state, it kind of gives you permission to release. That's just my own.
Yes. And it's almost like a safety mechanism, isn't it?
Yeah,
Because we can be aware of things like the breathing or,
yeah,
bodily activities, but they're on autopilot mainly. So,
yes.
if for instance the breathing slows to a point where it stops, then something will come in just to kick it into action
Take
again.
it back into action again. It's fascinating, isn't it?
Mm.
I find the whole thing fascinating, um, putting it together. But I do like just the simplicity because all that study around the body and this and that and everything, it's very helpful and educational. But I prefer the effortless being.
Well, you see, there's infinity wherever you look, don't you? You can
Yeah,
you look wherever you look, it could be collecting model toys or something, and it's
yeah,
like an infinite field. You could spend all your life studying it, but the thing you describe, which is just really nice, which is a great way to describe integration, really, which is just that the simplicity of functioning from effortless being, which you've become really familiar with and very competent at just resting effortlessly, and then everything else
yeah.
is taken care of. So the mental realm is taken care of,
Hmm.
uh, and the emotional and physical realms are taken care of, and the qualities of one's infinite nature and infinite potential, um, utilizing effortless being, become available in the other realms as well.
Yes.
So you could say that the unity which is present in the body of bliss or the body of wisdom find their way into the mental, emotional, and physical realms. So they're restoring a sense of unity within what previously was where duality was predominating.
Yes, yes. And you know, the I suppose I get back to the same word again. The amount of energy it takes one in that
Mm.
duality, it's I can see, where people get ill and they lack energy and there's so much that can come from that.
Yes.
because it takes up that natural flow of energy, I think, and
Yes,
contracts in so many ways. And our natural state, I think, is to have that flow in
definitely.
us.
Yes,
You know, it's like there's no Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, when there's no boxes. It's just a natural flow. And I
yes,
think that's has to be very helpful for, you know, why as we're here
yes.
in many ways. So yeah, it's it's a conversation that just that's incredible, really, isn't it?
It is.
It really is, you
Well,
know.
the way you describe it is, you know, with effortless being, we we're kind of preserving energy because there is no energy required just to be, no effort is required just to be. But then the option of the personal realm is still available. But you find that there can be a kind of overinvestment in the personal realm, which is what happens in the human realm generally, because we're told that you know everything of value is happening in the mind, the emotions, and the body. So there can be an overinvestment. So we're kind of creating this
Yeah.
character that we've invested in, and then we're having to run
Mm,
that whole show with the thoughts and the emotions and the physical activity.
mm,
But
mm.
actually you can just withdraw the energy from those realms to some degree, and then it's just, and then you have the energy available for when it's required. So it's just, you know, generally we're functioning from effortless being, but then when some energy or effort's required in any of those fields, then it's available to us. But it's a much more economical way of functioning, really.
I love that word, the you know the overinvestment,
Mm,
because it really makes a lot of sense. And
mm.
there's a lot of overinvestment until we arrive, I think, at this.
Yes,
And I think that overinvestment can come to a breaking point for people as well. You know, when I listen to people and their stories
yes,
and they realize and they're holding on to the stories.
yes.
And that's what I would call overinvestment.
Definitely. Well, it's almost like an energetic bankruptcy because there's so
Yeah.
much overinvestment that it reaches
Yes.
a point where it's untenable, and then there can be, you know, a bit of a breakdown. But the breakdown usually is an opening because it puts us back into the impersonal realm.
Yeah. But there's also, I found, a resistance.
Mm.
So, you know, on the one hand, they want the opening and the help. And on
Yeah.
the other hand, well, this is who I am, you know,
Yes.
and I put effort into everything. So
Yeah.
there can be a resistance on that hand. And the resistance can often be the big problem,
Yes.
you know, and so, yeah, it's and I think there can only be small steps taken in certain situations
Yeah,
like that.
exactly. And you recognize them, don't you? But I
Yeah,
think for you, Rita, what will happen, especially because you know you've been involved in therapy and you know helping people, um, the the way it functions will be reconfigured so that you know the people who are ready to hear your version of things in terms of realization,
mm,
they will appear effortlessly. There isn't
mm,
anything you need to do to
yes,
find them. They show up because they're recognizing in you
mm,
they're looking for, and
mm,
so it's an effortless process, and it's so enriching, really, that I feel so blessed to have that experience.
yes,
You know, there's
yes,
no there's no effort on the part of David Bingham to make anything happen, really, but it's just that sense of being effortlessly available. And then if someone wants a conversation or
yeah,
uh, you know, it's just being there. And but it's
yeah.
the way it evolves is in a way that you could never conceive of. You know, because the intelligence which is administering the whole process is way beyond the capacity of the mind.
But I love the fact that, you know, you're definitely the product. I mean, I mean, we all sense, I know, we all sense it, you know, and with you, it's so obvious, you know, the effortlessness. And you don't have to have anything, you know, showy off, or you're not performing anything. It's just David.
Hmm.
And that's the beauty of it, and that's what catches people, I think. It certainly catches. I straight away I got that. Um, and it's interesting because I had groups of people there before Christmas, and yeah, so I decided, just to rest back, sit back, do nothing. Even though my brain was going now, I could get in touch with these people, this group, and all of that. But the other part of me is saying, not for now,
Yes.
not for now,
Yes.
and adhering to that, because that
Yeah.
effortless flow of however I speak,
Yes.
with the group will be different
Yeah.
than
It's
previous.
it's amazing the way your intuition has been
Mm,
so clear, really, because
mm,
the choices you've made, um, for every day just to be really joyful and light and easy, and having no intention particularly, just other than to be light and joyful and a sense of gratitude, but just walking or
yeah.
sitting or spending time with people in a nice quiet way, or
Mm,
um, it's that simplicity really, because it's within that simplicity that the infinite being can find its way in.
yeah.
Whereas if the mind's planning and organizing things, then it's limiting the potential really.
It is, and that is so true. Um, and you can really feel the beauty in less is more.
Mm, yeah.
You can nearly feel it in your essence that less is more.
Yes.
And once you get a little taste of it, you don't want to change that. It's just too precious.
Mm,
And it's like that infinite being is having a way in.
yes.
And in expression and the knowing
Mhm.
and trusting of all of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really lovely, and it's lovely to chat to you about this. I'm so glad that this time has come at this time, even though there's no time,
Yes.
um, for us just to have that chat, because for me it's been a real pleasure. Um,
Well, also, it's I had no idea when you made contact what the content of our conversation would be, but for you just to be able to describe the way realization has emerged, in such a clear and inspiring way, that's just it's just such an amazing wave of joy, really, that comes.
mm, yeah. It is. But I had the knowing again, in some way that, when I first got in touch with your office there, that this
Mm,
timing was just yeah, I thought this is just right for me, because it was like I was on a wave,
yes. Yeah.
and this is the next happening,
Yes.
and just to go with that. Now you can't really put all that into words, but you know what I'm saying. It had a lovely flow to it.
A guiding intelligence behind it, really, in all the.
Yes, 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 and it's just lovely to know that. It really is. So, I think this was a lovely timing, David. It really was, just to have this conversation, to have this chat. Uh, a little bit of kind of confirming for me,
Good.
as well, like from our both of our essence, that
Yeah. Yeah,
what I
it's
was chatting
just
about
nice
makes
just
sense.
to tune in, and the I love the Irish take on things and the Irish humor. So there's always an entertaining factor involved as well.
It could be dangerous, David. You know that, don't you? You never know what we come out with.
No.
You never know, I can tell you. But for the most part, I think we're harmless anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think realization, the conditioning I had, like from my dad and the Irish conditioning, is something which um, it's more of an achievement to realize effortless being with Irish conditioning, because we're conditioned into being such chatterboxes, really.
True. You're so true, true. But and it can be chatter about anything,
Yeah.
and everything, and not anything about ourselves, really. This essential self,
Mm.
that kind of. And I was very aware of all of that. And just before this started to happen, I just to ask you on this one, before it started to happen, I found that inner narrative was getting really, really angry and
Oh,
annoyed and frustrated and really giving me a hard time.
mm.
I mean, really, and I thought, oh my God, this is just, this is ridiculous. It just went on and on and on, the narrative.
Yes.
Have you ever come across that before?
That's actually very common because
Oh, really?
um, it's when, in a way, you could say the dualistic realm, which
Hmm.
is a combination of the mental, emotional, and physical,
Yeah.
kind of gets wind of the fact that you're going to be exiting the dualistic realm.
Okay.
So what it tends to do is it
Mm.
tends to try to draw you back in with the most intense invitation. So things like anger and well, just the way you described that
Yeah.
experience does sometimes precede realization because it's the last stand of the dualistic realm to try to keep you hooked. But it was game over already.
Wow, that's incredible because we're so intense at times. There was nearly a moment where you'd nearly give up and this is
Yeah.
all too much and just go back down into, that dualistic realm. So it's really good to know that because when you're soldiering kind of on your own,
Yes.
it's great to have those pointers
Yeah.
to say, oh, by the way, this is what happens,
Yeah.
just when you're kind of coming to the edge of something. So, I just thought at one stage, I'm just going pure mad. That's what it is. I'm going mad. Oh,
And
and
then
that's the Irish psyche as well. So what? But anyway, yeah. So it's thank you for answering that and those questions. It's been just great.